The cool uncle who helped me build my treehouse turned out to be a serial killer. For 22 years, Keith was a permanent fixture in my family's life. He wasn't a blood relative, but to my siblings and me, he was Uncle Keith. He was my dad's best friend from college, the guy who lived just 3 streets over, and the person we could always count on to show up to our high school graduation ceremonies, backyard barbecues, and band recitals. Keith was a carpenter by trade. He was a quiet, gentle giant of a man always, wearing flannel shirts smelling faintly of cedar shavings and peppermint gum. When I was 10, Keith spent 3 entire weekends helping me build a massive 2-story treehouse in our backyard. He patiently taught me how to measure twice and cut once, how to hammer a nail straight, and how to sand down rough edges so I wouldn't get splinters. I kept a photograph of the 2 of us standing in front of that finished treehouse on my desk all through college. Then, 3 years ago, the FBI raided his house. I was 24, living in a small apartment about an hour away from my hometown. When my dad called me, he wasn't just crying. He was making this high-pitched, hyperventilating sound that I had never heard a grown man make. It took him 3 minutes to gasp out the words, "They arrested Keith." My brain immediately jumped to the standard, mundane tragedies. Did he get a DUI? Did he get caught up in some tax fraud? No. Leo, my dad sobbed. The police are at his house. They're digging up the crawl space. They're saying he's the Interstate 90 killer. For those who don't know, the Interstate 90 killer was a shadow that loomed over the Pacific Northwest for nearly 2 decades. Between 1998 and 2014, 9 young women had vanished from various rest stops and motels along the interstate. The cases had gone icy cold. Keith had been arrested at a local diner while eating pancakes. I remember hanging up the phone and staring at the framed photo of us on my desk. In the picture, Keith has his arm draped over my 10-year-old shoulders, both of us grinning wildly. I looked at his hands in the photo, the big, calloused, capable hands that had helped me hold a handsaw. My stomach turned over, and I threw up in my trash can. The trial was a blur of sickening, surreal revelations. Because my dad was Keith's closest friend, our family was dragged into the absolute center of the media circus. The detectives interviewed us for hours, trying to figure out if we had known, or if we had unwittingly helped him cover his tracks. We hadn't. We were just blind. As the details of the prosecution's case emerged, a horrifying timeline began to align with my childhood memories. June 2004, Keith missed my 8th birthday party. He apologized profusely, claiming his truck had broken down on a carpentry job 3 hours away. In reality, that was the weekend. A 21-year-old college student vanished from a gas station off Exit 25.
August 2008, Keith helped us move into our new house. He brought his industrial-strength carpet cleaner to help us prep the old place. The prosecution later proved he had used that exact same machine to scrub the interior of his van after his 5th victim. The crawl space. The most devastating blow was the excavation of his home. They found trophies, cheap jewelry, driver's licenses, and hair clips buried in jars beneath his workshop. The very workshop where I used to sit on a stool, drinking soda, watching him carve wooden toys for local charity drives. The psychological whiplash was paralyzing. How could a man who carefully bandaged my knee when I fell off my bike be the same monster who hunted human beings? My dad took it the hardest. He aged 10 years in a matter of months. He kept repeating the same phrase over and over. I let him hold my kids. I let him babysit the visit. Keith pleaded guilty to avoid the death penalty. He was sentenced to life without parole. For 2 years, I didn't speak his name. I threw away the photo. I helped my dad dismantle the backyard treehouse with a crowbar, splitting the wood into splinters, and burning it in a bonfire until there was nothing left but ash. But 6 months ago, I did something my family still doesn't know about. I booked a visitation at the maximum security facility where he is being held. I needed to see him. I needed to see if the monster finally looked like a monster, or if he still looked like the uncle who bought me my first baseball glove. When they brought him out, he looked incredibly fragile. He had lost weight, his hair was entirely white, and he was wearing a standard issue orange jumpsuit. He picked up the telephone behind the glass, and his eyes welled with tears. Tears. "Leo," he whispered, his voice cracking. "You've grown so much. How is your dad?" It was the same gentle, warm voice. That was the most terrifying part. There was no red-eyed demon behind the glass. It was just Keith. "Don't ask about my dad," I said, my hand trembling on the receiver. "I only have one question for you, Keith, and I want the truth." He nodded solemnly. "Anything, Leo. I'm so sorry for the pain I caused you guys. When you were with us," I started, my voice shaking so hard I could barely get the words out. "When you were teaching me how to build things, or watching movies on our couch, were you pretending? Was the guy who loved us just a mask you wore to hide the monster?" Keith looked at me through the scratched plexiglass. He let out a long, heavy sigh, and for a split second, the warmth in his eyes completely vanished. It was replaced by a cold, flat, dead emptiness. "No, Leo," he said softly. "I wasn't pretending. I loved you guys. You were my real life." He paused, leaning a bit closer to the glass. "The other thing, the hunting, that was just my hobby." I hung up the phone. I didn't say goodbye.
I walked out of the prison into the bright, cold afternoon air and sobbed in my car for an hour. I realized then that the scariest monsters aren't the ones hiding in the dark, wearing masks, or jumping out from behind bushes. The scariest monsters are the ones who can genuinely, truly love you, go home, and then turn around and do the unthinkable to someone else without ever feeling the divide.